are. But I must say, I cannot imagine this is going to be a substitute for real live. Ready? All right, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. I thank you very much for joining us for our first e-policy circle for Beirut Institute Summit. Those who are part of the Beirut Institute Summit family know that the policy circles are normally off the record, but this time, because we have had to take to the webinars, we will be on the record, and we are so honored to have with us a fantastic group of not only leaders, but also deep intellectuals. And I will start by welcoming the co-chair for Beirut Institute Summit, His Royal Highness Prince Turki Faisal. Welcome, Your Royal Highness.
Thank you.
I am extremely pleased to have with us His Excellency Minister Anwar Gargash, who is actually the first time that he's a speaker with Beirut Institute Summit in Abu Dhabi. This time it's going to be online. Hopefully next time it will be in March 13 and 14, 2021, the new date for our summit. And welcome, Dr. Anwar Gargash. I have with us our marvelous, regular, committed, fabulous general, David Petraeus, who has been so loyal to Beirut Institute Summit in Abu Dhabi. And I welcome you, and I look forward for your always controversial contributions, because they're always sort of like thinking out of the box. So welcome for joining, and thank you for joining. Ahlan wa sahlan. And then we have Dr. Andrei Fedorov, who is not someone who shies away from making statements that create very important debates. And I thank you for joining us from Moscow. So we have Moscow, New York, Riyadh, and Abu Dhabi, and I am in Beirut. I'm Raghida Dergham. I'm the co-chair for the Summit of Beirut Institute, and also the founder and executive chairman of Beirut Institute. Thank you for those who are joining us, and I'm going to start as follows. Each of the participants will have 4 to 5 minutes to state what they have to say, and then we're going to be engaged into a frank discussion. We will not be taking
minutes or 5 minutes?
4 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
So thanks for asking for the clarifications. Either 4 minutes or 5 minutes for each of you, and then we will engage you in a conversation with each other. I shall have the honor of being the facilitator, moderator, / whatever you want to call me, in this role that I will be playing on this e-policy circle. So I will start. Unfortunately, we will not be taking interventions live, but we will be looking at questions that the participants, the audience, will send to us, and we'll try to accommodate as many questions as possible. So that I don't take any more time, Your Royal Highness, would you kindly start by giving us your take on stability redefined, in not aftermath, because we are in the middle of COVID-19, and of course in the crises, that multiple crises that came as a result. Kindly give us your take on stability redefined.
Thank you very much, Raghida, and it's a privilege and a pleasure to be with this distinguished group of thinkers and doers. First of all, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The kingdom, of course, has been in the COVID storm from the beginning, and took very stringent measures to try to stem the impact of that storm on the people and worldwide. At the same time, the kingdom is the chair of the G20 this year. And so King Salman took the initiative of hosting a summit of the G20 via similar facilities like you're providing us today. And you've seen the results of that summit. I think they were very much dedicated towards finding solutions rather than trying to place blame on anybody. And that is, I think, where we should be going. In the kingdom, of course, the measures taken have been very, very strict. just yesterday, a new regulation on fines and prison terms for people who break the regulations and appear to be not performing what is required of them, has been put in place. Yani amounts reaching 1 million riyals of fines and 1 year sentence in prison for those who break either the regulations or other norms that have been put in place. Health-wise, the kingdom is, of course, the largest in the Gulf states in recording um, the number of afflicted citizens and residents. But in terms of deaths, percentage-wise, the kingdom has one of the lowest percentages of deaths in the world, thank God. And I think that is because of the preparation before COVID took the ground, as it were, in the health services and ancillary activities. And this is not unique to Saudis, but also to all residents in the kingdom, including those who are not here officially, meaning the illegals or the ones without official documentation. They're all being put in the health service environment and being treated whenever is necessary. My biggest concern today, I think, is on what I see happening between China and the United States. It's as if we're going back to grade school with finger pointing and blaming and other actions that don't bode well for the world community. And this is, I think, a dangerous time. We have one common enemy, which is Corona. I think all of us should be in the same effort to beat it and get the world back to normal, if that can be achieved, and depending what you mean by normal. But otherwise, I think in general, my take on this is that I'm hoping for the best. And the G20 put that very succinctly in its statement by saying our first priority is the welfare of the health of humanity. That is where all our efforts should be put. And if we are to blame each other or to point fingers at each other, I don't think that is helpful. That should be done after we get over this horrible storm that has engulfed all of us. We're all victims of this. And when it comes to human life, nothing can be more precious or more valuable than finding the cure for Corona as quickly as possible. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak like that.
So just a quick follow-up on what you said. Is the G20 able to put the parameters of stability redefined, or do you think it's gonna be it has to reinvent itself in order to matter? Is Saudi Arabia trying to play a role in that?
Well, I don't know what you mean by reinvent itself. The G20 represents the countries that have the highest GDP in the world, and in that context, their responsibility has been recognized since the past crisis we had, 15 years ago or something like that. And so they don't need to reinvent themselves, but what they have done, I think, is the right thing. They have pointed to the cures, cures for not just health-wise, but also economic stability, incentivizing the recovery from whatever economic ills we have gone through, and put a plan forward. That is the role of the G20. Of course, the world community, through the United Nations and through other world organizations, has a responsibility as well. And Mr. Guterres has been coming forward with many proposals, and there have been many conferences held at various levels to put forward programs and activities for the world community. So I think this is where we're going.
Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness. Your Excellency, Minister Anwar Gargash, please give us your take on how do you see stability redefined?
Well, again, I think what we're all facing essentially is a public health crisis. I think the world has gone through several economic crises, but has not gone through a global public health crisis. And that's why you see that we are clearly unprepared, as an international system. Of course, this crisis from day one had an impact on the economy and on food security. I mean, the way we look at it, it's a multiple crisis where public health is the main indicator, the economic indicator is right behind it, and sometimes surpassing it, to be honest, in its severity. But clearly, from our regional perspective, the food security part is a problem. At the same time, two other parts that are very clear in the Gulf. One of them is labor, and the other one is energy. And these have an impact anywhere in the world, but here they have also substantial fiscal problems. Again, to echo what Prince Turki said, I think we've done a good job in addressing the crisis so far. It's not like we have had a game plan or roadmap, but from day one, we realized that this is not going to be staying in China. It will come actually west. And, our major thing is the belief in testing. We've done now, out of a population of 9 million, we've done about 1.4 million tests in the UAE. And we are doing about 30,000 tests every day. Every day you test, you find 300-400 people who actually have the symptom. But that is, I think, a major thing. But what I would say is Prince Turki spoke about US-China, and I'm not going to repeat that because I agree with him totally. But I think what has really emerged is the efficacy of dealing with the issue has nothing to do with ideology. The efficacy is to do with state capacity. Some states have done very well because they've got the institutions, the capacity, the planning, and some states have not done so well regardless of ideology. So I think the emphasis will be a lot on state capacity. I also see that there has been more of a myth, and this is something we need to deal with. And to deal with this, I think the Europeans are admitting that rather than think in an EU, sort of frame of mind, they've been really thinking in France or Germany or Poland or Spain frame of mind. And this has been all over the world. Even here in the Gulf, we've been thinking more about a national program. So I would say that state efficacy has basically played an important part, while regional or global capability and cooperation has taken a backseat. And I think this is not entirely a good thing. This is something that we need to deal with. I would say also we would look at globalization differently. Again, I would say that it's too early to prophesize, but again, there will be questions about globalization. Here in the Gulf, I'm sure we will have a lot of questions about what constitutes a Gulf rentier state model. I mean, we've been for many years trying to escape that model with varying degrees of success, but I think this is going to accelerate the necessity for us to find something a little bit more sustainable. I'm going to stop here. I have more comments, but I'm sure they will come in the discussion.
Yes, please. I'll do a quick follow-up on what you said regarding labor and energy, but I would stop at the issue of labor, which is a particular one for this part of the region, as you mentioned. Are you thinking of the need of structural reforms in order to deal with your issue, like before we went on air, live, we were talking about the Western countries have got the problem of unemployment, but in your part of the world, you have the problem of the expat labor. Are you studying structural, real reform on the structural level, or is this not the time?
No, I think it's a bit too early to say, but clearly labor does not mean all expatriates, but because a large segment of it is in creative jobs, in let's say medium jobs and so on and so forth. And these will be affected by any economy in terms of unemployment or in terms of an economy facing a severe crisis such as the one we see today. But I think labor here is the Gulf has depended on a large number of blue-collar expat labor. Not only the Gulf is dependent. You know, one of the largest employers of Arab labor, for example, in the world is the Gulf countries. So this has an effect both ways. And I think these are areas that will be under consideration. One would have to look at it and to see, is this model that has been part and parcel of the development model in the region since the 1950s and maybe before, is this sustainable the same way? Should it be tweaked or not? I think it's a bit early, but this is emerging, I think, as a major issue.
Great. I'm going to get back to these issues during that further larger discussion, but let me bring in General David Petraeus. General, I know that you have you want to say what you have to say in your opening statement, but I'm sure you're going to address the US-China angle, and I'm sure you will probably touch on the bilateral dimension of that potential, I don't know if it is going to be a face-off or it's going to be contained, but maybe you would also, if you have chance to tell us, how would it reflect on this region, the Arab region, or is it separate? Is it only bilateral, or will it have impact on this part of the world? The floor is yours.
Well, first of all, thanks. Thanks, Raghida. It's always great to be with the Beirut Institute, even if in this case it is virtually, and it's always a pleasure and a privilege to share a stage with my fellow Princetonian and fellow former spy master Prince Turki, with one of the region's foremost diplomats, Dr. Anwar Gargash, and also to have Dr. Fedorov join us from Moscow. I think, first of all, it's much too early to draw any conclusions about whether stability has been redefined, is being redefined, what the implications of this are. But it's not too early to start at least focusing on the questions that we should be seeking answers to over time as we do indeed start to draw conclusions about this. As you may recall, I've been associated with a particular question since early on in the invasion of Iraq when I was a young two-star general, and it was clear that all of the assumptions that we'd been provided prior to the invasion were being invalidated one by one, and I turned to a reporter who was with me, Rick Atkinson, and asked, tell me how this ends, because it was not clear to me at that time how that wasn't going to end. And I've been asked that question again now. Tell me how this ends. And of course, this now is the pandemic and the associated economic collapse that has resulted from the steps we've had to take to deal with the health crisis in each of our countries. There have been a few titles that I have thought about for this piece that I should share. One of them is 2 to 3 years to a new normal. And that new normal is going to be different from the old normal because business and consumer behavior is going to change as a result of this. We don't know yet how much, but it is clear that many, many industries and many sectors of the economy will be affected by changes in how we work, how we travel, whether we travel, in, again, tourism and hospitality and all of these different venues and so forth. So that could be quite profound. Another possible title, since, as you know, I'm a former economics professor, was It Depends. And it does depend, obviously, on a host of different factors, some of which have already been raised, and I'll raise some more. And then there's another which came from a projection made by one of my old dissertation advisors at Princeton 25 years ago. Now he's at Harvard, who predicted that the world would be less open, less prosperous, and less free. Now, I hope that that is not the case, but I can see how he might have assumptions that could lead him to that kind of conclusion. In the meantime, of course, how this ends is really with a vaccine and or a therapeutic treatment. Noting that, for example, HIV was never actually, there's never a vaccine for it. It's the treatment that enables people with that to live a normal life. And so there's a race on to get these different, to solve these problems. 100 or more initiatives in the vaccine arena alone. In the meantime, the question is, how can restrictions that have been imposed on societies around the world to break the community transmission of the virus can be relaxed and done safely? And of course, the issue here, as both of the previous speakers have highlighted, is the issue of testing and then contact tracing. In the United States, this has to be expanded very, very significantly if there is to be the establishment of the confidence that is necessary for consumers to resume some of their normal activities. Keep in mind that it's not enough for governments to say you can reopen your doors, businesses of this type or that type. There has to be the confidence in society for individuals to walk into those doors and again to resume some of their normal activities for the economy to gradually begin to recover. And that again is going to be dependent on massive increase in testing. I mean, it could be at some point that we will have a credential digitally that we will carry around that will show that we were tested in the last 24 hours and we are COVID-19 free, and therefore we can get on a plane or do whatever else it is that we would like to do. That's crucial, even as there are continued measures. People work from home where they still can. The most vulnerable in society still shelter in place. A whole host of, including wearing masks in public places when physical distancing is not possible. That will gradually start to help some economic activity resume. But there are a lot of geopolitical
How about the
implications.
geopolitics of it general, the geopolitics? But everybody is interested in the US and China. And
well, as I was just saying, there are numerous. I was just saying there are numerous geopolitical implications, needless to say as well. Foremost among these, certainly, as has been raised previously, is the effect on the US-China relationship. Obviously, there have been frictions in this relationship. My hope, frankly, is that leaders of both countries, and again, a relationship that's the most important in the entire world, that they can, for the time being, let's put the differences aside, let's put the blame and finger pointing aside for now, to come up with a global response to a global problem. Keep in mind that none of us is safe when there is a global pandemic unless all of us are safe. And so, again, the leaders of the two greatest countries in the world hopefully can come together, then certainly bringing in the G7, the G20, as has been highlighted previously, to spearhead that, keeping in mind that it is just now that Latin America, Africa, and South Asia are seeing how terrible the pandemic can be. They're weeks behind Europe and the United States when it comes to this. And many of those countries do not have the fiscal and monetary firepower that the US and other developed economies of the world have to provide support at a time when you're seeing unemployment levels that rival those of the Great Depression, not just the Great Recession. So again, my hope would be that geopolitically, this could be a time where we return to the use of multilateral institutions, international organizations, and indeed the leaders of the two foremost countries in the world do come together, share information, share over time treatment and vaccine discoveries and help the world come to a global solution, without which there will still be a global problem that will have an associated economic issue with it.
Great, thank you very much, General. Dr. Andrei Fedorov, Russia has had its own notion and definition of stability, and basically in the meaning of stabilization versus stability, or at least as it was interpreted by Russia. Where is Russia now? Give us your sort of 4-minute take, and then I have lots of questions for you on how Russia is seeing or defining stability in its new phase, or is it just business as usual? Please go ahead, Dr. Fedorov.
Thank you, Raghida. I will not go into these coronavirus issues too much. I want to mention a couple of things. First of all, what is going on now with this coronavirus is the postponement of existing crises. We are speaking about coronavirus, but still we have absolutely obvious problems in Syria. We have problems in Libya. We have, at least my personal opinion, next month will be a very serious turmoil in Iran. So, Afghanistan, many other things. We are just a little bit forgot about these things, which are still going on without any solution. This is the weak point of foreign policy for all the countries, including Russia. For Russia also, there is one negative point, is that Russia is losing now its favorite toy. I mean, theme of disarmament. No one is interested in disarmament at this stage, frankly speaking. And it will be very hard for Russia to play, again, a role of country which is trying to bring peace, stability, blah, 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 with the situation when interest towards disarmament is on the nearly zero level. And I don't think that this situation will change. It's a problem for us. What I see now, first of all, I see that in the future, solution of many existing problems will be even more difficult than now. Why? Because all the main players, including Russia, China, United States, etc., they will be more or less weaker than today because of economic problems, because of this coronavirus, because of many other things. And it means that all the players, including, by the way, Russia, will definitely spend less time, less money, less efforts for the solution of existing crises. So that's why I don't expect any kind of new stage of stability after coronavirus will be more or less over. Vice versa, we will come to the new stage without reserves, financial, personal, and other reserves to solve this crisis. It means that my main idea, we should be prepared for the period, maybe to the end of this year, when all these old crises, existing crises, will be brought back to the agenda of all of us. And we will be obliged to return to them. And if there will be no understanding how to deal with this, I don't know how it will come. Concerning the United States and China, one very quick comment. I'm absolutely sure that out of this crisis, United States will go out much more stronger than China. I mean, on the international level. Maybe not economically in some cases, but internationally, United States will be a winner. United States will be capable to form rather broad anti-Chinese coalition, which they started to build up since the beginning of this year. And I don't think that there is a chance to find common language between these two countries on key problems which are existing between them.
So that's very interesting. Andrei Fedorov thinks that the US will be the winner in that duel between the United States and China. And I'm sure that I'm going to drag out of all of you your own point of view on this one. But let me stop at a couple of things that you said, Fedorov. You said there will be in the next month's turmoil in Iran. Can you explain what you mean? And do you expect that it's going to spill over Gulf states, the Arab Gulf states, or into a confrontation with the United States. Can you explain exactly what you mean? And then I want to ask you later on, during the engagement, on Russia in Syria. We're hearing a lot about that. But focus with me on this, the turmoil in Iran that you are predicting and its consequences.
So my contacts with Iran are showing that they are entering probably the last stage of their semi-stability inside the country. Economic situation there is terrible. Mood among the citizens is also become more and more negative. And in this situation, for Iranian leadership, there is no other way out of the current situation inside the country than to create an outside crisis. And most probably, as it was before, it will be the crisis created with United States, because it's much easier for them to do this. According to my personal knowledge, only to my personal knowledge, the end of May might be, and beginning of June might be a new stage of the crisis inside Iran and outside Iran. And Gulf countries should be ready for this, because in Russia, we see it as a negative scenario, but very probable scenario.
Then let me take this to the other distinguished panelists. Your Royal Highness, you heard what Mr. Fedorov just said, and I want to also invite Dr. Anwar Gargash on this one. So be ready, get a little bit worried because stability may not be lasting at all, or the potential of stability is not lasting in the region. Can you first address what Fedorov said, and then I'm going to go to General Petraeus after both of you talk about Iran as potentially another round of attempting instabilities, especially by engaging the United States in the Gulf area, of course. Your Royal Highness, Prince Turki Faisal.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fedorov, for what you said, because we've been living with this Iranian situation now since the revolution. And Iran's choosing to put on the outside blame for what is happening in the area and inside Iran is not new. The great Satan has been the banner in the Iranian revolution since its inception, and directing, directing the venomous and their very harsh words, not just to America, but to countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel and other places, has always been a practice for Iran. And I'm sure I'm not in government, so I don't know what my government is considering on this aspect, but I'm sure that we have been stung too many times by Iran's overacting and beyond border ambitions since the revolution started. And most recently, of course, in Saudi Arabia has been the bombing of the Aramco facilities last year. And yet we as a kingdom, I think we've been acting very much with stability in mind, in bringing this as not just a Saudi responsibility, but as a world responsibility that must act to prevent Iran from continuing to do what it has been doing since the last 40 years. This is not new to us. This is something that has been in the Iranian field of vision since the revolution, as I said. And their extraterritorial ambitions have not been hidden by them. They have boasted about controlling 4 Arab capitals. Look at their media now, blaming the United States for the coronavirus and so on. So yes, you are absolutely right. And the countries in the Gulf Arab Cooperation Council, I'm sure, have taken this into account. And hopefully the United States is equally aware of these dangers.
But okay, but what are you doing about it, Prince Turki? Last time when there was an attack on tankers and what have you, the US sort of said But that is your problem, not really much ours. Is there any new thinking amongst the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, all the GCC countries, or some of the GCC countries together? Are you better prepared? Are you more ready to take care of yourself in case there is a need by Iran to shake the stability in your own countries through bringing further instability, whether it's by attacks against tankers or otherwise? Any new thinking on that, Ms. Turki? Do you know of any planning?
As I told you, I'm not in government, but I've seen, Yani, that the kingdom and of course the Emirates, Bahrain and Kuwait and Oman. I don't know about Qatar. They seem to have some different interpretations as to where the threat might come from. These countries have been, I'm sure, Yani, dealing with the situation, as I said, for many years. But also, we've been dealing with the United States. Yani, since the attack on the Aramco oil facilities, the United States has come forward and agreed to place military hardware and personnel in the kingdom, particularly, along with what they have already in places like the Emirates, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar and Oman. So as far as security and safety, this is what we've been seeking, and that the world, it's a responsibility for the world and not just for the GCC countries to meet this challenge of Iranian extraterritorial ambition and trying to throw on others what it should be dealing with in its own turf.
Minister Anwar Gargash, you heard what Andrei Fedorov said. Turmoil expected to change the subject outside through generating outside crises, probable engagement with the United States, the provocation of the United States, that it is really that territory will be your part of the world. How prepared are you? How frightened are you? How reasonable do you think?
I mean, again, I'm going to build on what Mr. Fedorov and Prince Turki said. Yes, we can see a multitude of issues and problems here. And at the same time, this is not the first time. We've been living this sort of environment in the Gulf for a long time. But really, if we go back and think, how does COVID-19 affect regional opportunities? In my opinion, the key here is to try and think that we will come out with a new regional order is long-term thinking, and it's not practical thinking. So I think we need to really concentrate on de-escalation. In my opinion, one of the things that we will see in the coming period is a realization, for the same reasons that Mr. Fedorov mentioned, that countries realize that they have gone through a traumatic experience, and as a result, nobody really wants a confrontation. So de-escalate. And I think here, some people who think that we can somehow, turn the page and start putting together a new Gulf regional order, I think this is a little bit, too ambitious. But de-escalation is something that can be achieved, and it's in everybody's interest. Because I feel that the coming period, all countries will be looking internally. The type of issues that we are facing, financial and otherwise, are going to lead all of us to look internally. And if you look internally, you are bound to think of de-escalation externally. I think this will be a period of re-examining development policies internally. I don't really see it as a period of rebuilding regional orders. So from that perspective, I think vis-a-vis Iran, they will be really between two instances pulling them apart. The explanation that Dr. Fedorov gave, but on the other hand, also realization that they've got internal priorities that cannot wait. And these internal priorities are not necessarily political, but they impact politically. And I think this is the way that I see it. I think everybody is going to think that the real winner here is your state capacity.
Dr. Gargash, the UAE had reached out to Iran during the difficulties of the coronavirus and this pandemic really spreading in Iran. And I think you had a humanitarian relationship with Iran. Has this been developed further into something more? Are you now at having discussions further
let us put this in context. Last year, I think it's been so long, but last year, the UAE and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia also jointly sent humanitarian support to Iran following floods. There has been other instances of earthquakes, etc., that countries look beyond the political. So I'm not really going to give these measures any political, extra political weight. I mean, there is always a political angle, but I think it emphasizes the issue that the priority right now, after, we've all been hit by a hurricane, regionally, globally, and the first thing you think is trying to, sort of put the pole up, make sure the tent is up, and I think de-escalation should be ruling how we conduct our foreign policy during this coming period.
General Petraeus, obviously, if you hear it from the Iranian side, you hear that it is the United States who wants to provoke a confrontation. If you hear it from the US side, it is really the action of Iran, be it in Iraq, in Lebanon, in the potentially what Dr. Fedorov said in the Gulf through new operations, that is really calling for a confrontation. What is your view? How is the United States going to act, especially this administration? Because I think the Iranians are thinking maybe, well, dragging Donald Trump into confrontation may cost him the elections. Give us your assessment and share with us your zones of comfort and your fears of what is coming in the next couple of months as a result of what you have just heard a little earlier, turmoil in Iran and beyond.
Well, first of all, I don't think there's any question about the source of the provocation. It has been Iran. It was Iran that shot down a $130 million drone over the Strait of Hormuz. It was Iran that harassed shipping in the Gulf. It was Iran that attacked the Saudi Aramco facilities and so forth. And it's Iranian-supported proxy militias that are carrying out various actions in Iraq and in other places. I think it's always important to remember the context when you're talking about Iran. It retains, regardless of the pandemic or whatever, we've been hit by a hurricane. I like the metaphor, but the fact is that Iran's long-term objective is unchanged. It is hegemony over the Shia crescent, and it is the Lebanonization of Iraq and Syria, in addition now to having Lebanonized Lebanon. By that I mean that you have powerful militias on the ground that give you great strength in that regard, Hezbollah, and then there is power in the parliament as well. In this case, the Hezbollah coalition in Lebanon is literally going to be the foundation for the government, as you know very well, being there in Beirut. And they'd like to do the same in Iraq, and ultimately they'd love to do the same in Syria and probably even Yemen if they could pull it off. But they're in a very, very difficult situation. They are being crushed by the economic sanctions. Their economy is in free fall. The currency is devaluated. Unemployment is vastly higher. They've mismanaged every aspect of the economy, including even water. And now they have completely mismanaged the response to the pandemic, completely stalled in what they should have done early on and allowed a variety of different major activities to take place in which the transmission of the virus was very, very broad indeed. Beyond that, I don't think that they want to provoke war with the United States. I think they realize what could happen. And by the way, they know that the United States has improved its defenses. It's consolidated its forces on a number of bases in Iraq. It's surrounded them now. It has Patriots and other air and ballistic missile defenses. It's done the same as Prince Turki noted, in the Gulf states as well, and shored them up, including forces back on Saudi soil for the first time in probably decades, really. And so I think, again, they are going to be cautious. That doesn't mean that they won't use, again, their proxy militias to try to push US forces out of Iraq or Syria or perhaps other locations. It does mean that they're not going to provoke the United States directly, because the United States is in an even more defensible position, and presumably US Central Command has shored up the preparations for a variety of other activities as well. Beyond that, of course, they know there's an election coming up in November. There's not going to be any meaningful diplomacy prior to that. I've actually suggested perhaps some modest outreach to try to reduce the tension somewhat, but it would not be something very significant. And then after the election, we'll see whether or not there is the possibility of some kind of initiative to get back to an Iran nuclear agreement, but with the issues that cause concern resolved in terms of the end dates, the horizon, the sunset clauses, and so forth.
So just two quick follow-ups. One is, you mentioned Lebanon, where I'm sitting right here, but it is really at the breaking point. This country is really at the breaking point. And so as far as the United States is concerned, if it falls squarely into the hands of Iran, so no problem. And the Gulf states probably feel the same way. I don't know, maybe they will answer me through their distinguished representatives, but quick take on Lebanon and Iraq, so that these are the two important stages or fronts for potential confrontation, or maybe not, between the United States and Iran.
Well, look, Lebanon is going to have to develop a proposal for the IMF that is truly credible and that meets the requirements for an IMF support package. And it's not clear to me yet that they have been able to do that. This is not going to be the IMF bailing out Hezbollah. This is going to be the IMF supporting a package that truly will come to grips with the corruption that has plagued the country, that will truly come to grips with a variety of the other issues that have put the Lebanese economy at the brink of very collapse. So that would be my take on Lebanon. And then in Iraq, the hope is certainly that the current prime minister designate, who was again announced by President Barham Saleh, can move forward. My understanding is that within the next week, he will put forward his government, his list of candidates for the various ministries. And there is hope this time, I think, having not seen this happen with the two previous individuals who were designated as prime minister and given the chance to form a government and were unsuccessful in doing so. I think the prospects this time are that the parliament, that there can be the requisite votes in the Council of Representatives to enable the establishment of a government that can now deal with the challenges that Iraq faces, keeping in mind that the biggest challenge it has may not even be the pandemic or the, again, Iranian-supported Shia militia and a variety of other challenges of ethnic and sectarian nature and the corruption that has plagued the country. It is actually the collapse in the price of Brent crude. And for a country that really depends on the revenue from the export of crude oil, this is very, very difficult indeed. And they're going to have to come together on this. And there's no way they can sustain all of the different federal spending that they've had in the past, the fiscal spending, and they're going to have to work together to figure out how to make changes to get them through a tough period before the price does begin its recovery sometime probably next year.
Okay, thank you very much. Andrei Fedorov, straighten the record here, because we hear so many different input by the media, and both in Russia and the United States, across the world, telling us that there is a fundamental change in President Vladimir Putin's position towards President Bashar al-Assad. we hear that Turkey, Iran, and Russia are ready to sort of, have to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. Tell us what's going on. Is this a new alliance between Turkey? Is it possibly an alliance between Turkey and Russia because of the necessity to work it out in Syria, or you don't lend any of this any credence? What is your take on that, sitting in Moscow? Is this something we should take seriously or not?
Thank you. Yeah. One very small comment to the previous discussion. The problem is that both in Tehran and Moscow, there was very deep dissatisfaction with the fact that both countries wanted to use this coronavirus situation to become free of sanctions. And it didn't happen. This is a very important element because if, for example, Iran could be free of sanctions, situation might be changed. But now there is a growing anger, by the way, both in Moscow and Tehran. Okay, concerning Syria. Syria is becoming more and more headache for Russia. The support for Syrian operation is on the lowest level among Russian society. According to latest polls, it's only about 8% or something like this, in comparison with about 70% in the beginning. Problem for Moscow today is that the preliminary written timetable of going out of Syrian crisis is fully broken down. It's absolutely clear in Moscow that in 2020, there will be no solution found for Syria. There is no political process. There is no Geneva, there is no Astana, there is no Sochi, nothing. And the only solution for Syria today, from Russian point of view, is to try to help Bashar Assad to take control over the country, including Idlib. That's why we are increasing our military assistance to Assad during the last 2 months, because we understand that at this stage, this old scheme, when there should be a political process above all, is not working. It's not working.
Andrei, Fedorov, 1 second, because your voice was cut off a bit, and I want to make sure that we understand you. Did you say that the decision is to increase assistance by Russia to
military assistance?
You are challenging all these other public. I mean, it's been a wave of applications to say that actually the anger with Bashar al-Assad because he torpedoed the political process. He actually torpedoed the exit strategy of Russia, and now you're challenging all that, and you're saying, in fact, the decision is to tighten the support, not to loosen the support of Bashar al-Assad by Russia.
All this public media noise was just a noise. Russian position didn't change, because, as I said, there is no political process. There is no chances to start it again. And in this very stage, yes, it's very painful for Russia, especially in the consideration, taking consideration that at the current stage, Iran is taking more and more control over Syria on the ground, which Russia is not capable to make. And the thing for us is the best option for us at this stage. For Assad, take control over all the country, and then to play its own game with our help, without our help, to have elections, to have everything, and we can try to sell it as a positive way out. There is no other way. If it will not happen, if Assad will not be assisted by us, military especially now, and will not have offensive operation in Idlib, in this case, Russia will lose too many things in Syria.
So there will
we cannot stay there forever. We don't want to expand.
So just to understand you, you're saying there's going to be a new wave of attack in Idlib, right? That's further
Yes, new offensive operation, yes. It's inevitable now. from Syria.
I am going to be asking each of you to conclude, but you know, I'm going to stay with you to give you 1 minute quickly, Andrei Fedorov, to conclude because we are running out of time, and then I'm going to go backwards so that I could end with the Prince Turkey. So you give me your 1 minute take on, I mean, conclusion, if you will, on this debate, whatever you want, however you want to use that, your 1 minute. Go ahead, Andrei Fedorov.
Only 1 minute. So the world will be in more troubles after the coronavirus hysteria will be over. We will face much more new challenges, and our resources for solving the existing and coming problems are less than before the coronavirus. That's all.
Thank you very much, Andrei Fedorov. Gerard Petraeus, you got your 2 minutes now because, yeah, 2 minutes for 1.5, please, I'm told. Go ahead, Gerard Petraeus.
Well, I'd just sum up by saying again that a global pandemic and a global economic crisis require a global solution or global solutions. I do agree with Andrei that there will be less resources. The fact is that the United States, as an example, has spent in about a period of a month 3 times its annual discretionary budget to provide support for those who have been affected by this, which is a very broad part of our economy. And there will be fiscal pressures, not just in the United States, but I suspect in all governments in the wake of the pandemic's resolution and as the economies begin to come back. And that will weigh on what is possible in the future. And arguably, it makes it even more imperative that all the countries come together, in some cases, pool resources, pool solutions, and pool the approaches that will be necessary to resolve both a health and an economic crisis.
Thank you very much, Gerard Petraeus. I had Dr. Anwar Gargash, you got your 2 minutes. I'm sorry, I have so many questions coming and I did not even get to any of them. It's such an exciting conversation that everybody wants to get engaged. We should have been, we should have thought of 2 hours, but
again,
time is too bad.
I would say that the region, like all regions in the world, is going to be financially and politically weaker. I think we will be wise to think about our development models, about de-escalation, and to try some problem solving. However, there will be countries or parties that will try and continue their same way of foreign policy or international behavior that will not be helpful. I think we're also very much concerned about what we are seeing in terms of US-Chinese confrontation with its implications on our region. We need to heal. This is a period of healing, and healing means we need to look internally and we need to address the impact of this huge pandemic on our policies and on our relations with others. I hope we do the wise thing.
Thank you, Minister Anwar Gargash. Your Highness, Prince Turki Faisal, you've got, 1.5 to 2 minutes. Use it as you wish. 1.5 to 2 minutes, your conclusion.
Following on Dr. Gargash's last statement, which I fully agree, I have three things that I would like to say. One, on Syria, I think Mr. Putin has been on the wrong side of history in supporting Mr. Bashar al-Assad. And if the Arab League resolution back in, when was it, 2012, that was taken to the United Nations, which called for an interim government led by the then Vice President Farouk al-Shara, and the opposition in Syria had been passed in the United Nations, and unfortunately Russia and China vetoed it. If that had been passed, we would not be in Syria as it is today, but rather on a more peaceful path to Syria. The second thing I will say is that, yes, we in the kingdom particularly are now even more devoted to what the foresight of our leadership had when they proposed Vision 2030, which was to move us out of oil into a more diversified economy and a stronger internal base for that economy. And thirdly, Raghida Beirut Institute has proven its worth over and over again. And I thank you and all the workers of Beirut Institute for giving us this opportunity, and hopefully look forward to the next year's March meeting in Abu Dhabi.
Thank you very much. With your support, with the support of the host country, that without the host country we couldn't have gone on, with the presence always with of people of the caliber of General Petraeus and Andrei Fedorov, we are honored to have you launch this e-policy circles. Next week at this time, at the same time, next Wednesday, we will have Amr Moussa, Minister Alistair Burt, Vice Admiral Robert Harward, and Vitaly Naumkin. So for all of those who join us again, and forgive me for not getting to your questions. It was just such an exciting conversation. But
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
مع السلامة.
Thank you.
مع السلامة.
الله يسلمك.
Thank you.
كيف يتسكر؟